The Sacramento Kings have let go of Mike Brown after a 5-game skid there, losing to the Detroit Pistons 114-113 the other night on a buzzer beater. 4-point play from Jaden Ivey in the corner. Mike Brown came in the postgame and basically said that wasn't the game plan and it was a bonehead play by De'Aaron Fox, who he recently criticized and said that he need to have more leadership leading the team. Now, Mike Brown has come off 48 wins in his first season with the Sacramento Kings, winning Coach of the Year in 2023. In 2024, last year, 46 games, lost in the play-in. They defeated the Golden State Warriors, but dropped the game to the Pelicans, the 8-seeded Pelicans there last year, which was unfortunate because that team was coming off so much success of like the Beam, their first playoff appearance in 17 years since probably, I think, 2006, since Rick Adelman there. I believe they lost to the Spurs in that first round, all the way back, damn. And just failure to make back-to-back playoff appearances, which hurt them, obviously. This year, they're not playing too good, 13-18 currently on the season, which is unfortunate because you thought this team was going to continue to rise, especially when you trade for a guy like DeMar DeRozan, who's supposed to raise your level, which I thought was a misstep by the Sacramento Kings, in my opinion. I'll get into that in a minute. But just another Bush League move by the Sacramento Kings. I remember they had Mike Malone, who has come out and criticized the Sacramento Kings for firing Mike Brown. I remember Mike Malone had the Kings above 500. I believe they were 9-5 in 2015, and DeMarcus Cousins literally was in the hospital with various infection or something like that. And they went 2-7 in his absence, and then the Kings fired him. While DeMarcus Cousins was gone, probably the only coach to get through to DeMarcus Cousins. I know it was early in the season, but still to have the Kings at that point in time above 500 was fired after a small skid. Now, is this a panic move by Monty McNair, who's the executive GM for the Sacramento Kings? Most likely, because when you put together the roster and you're not getting the success that you think that you should get, especially with the addition of a guy like DeMar DeRozan, you're expecting better results. And especially in this Western Conference where it's kind of nip and tuck, but it's still competitive, they're probably thinking, hey, we should be better, and they aren't. This team has stepped back a little bit offensively, especially with their efficiency, especially from three-point range. They haven't been really a good defensive team under Mike Brown, but when he first got there, they were first in the league in offense. I believe they were 9th last year in offense, so they're still one of the top teams in offense. I believe they're 11th this year. So they're still hovering around that, but the defensive hasn't been there. But I don't understand Mike Brown getting fired because the inefficiencies, the deficiencies with this team. When you look at Domantas Sabonis, who is a great double-double machine, I call those guys like Alfred Sengun, Domantas Sabonis, mini jokers, where they don't have the output of a Nikola Jokic, but they do put up similar numbers in terms of style of play. And when you have a guy like that who doesn't protect the rim in this league, that's a problem. And it's been a problem that they haven't addressed for the past couple years, and just haven't addressed it. Haven't added 3-and-D guys, which they desperately needed, especially coming into this season. And I understand when they added DeMar DeRozan, you're expecting to get into those late game situations. He's supposed to take over, him and De'Aaron Fox. I believe De'Aaron Fox won Clutch Player a couple years ago, whatever the case. And you're expecting those two guys to take over late, and it hasn't happened. Keegan Murray has taken a step back, obviously with DeMar DeRozan coming in and getting more shots. His development hasn't been there, especially shooting the ball and being better from that aspect this year. His percentages are down as well. So I can see where there can be some disconnect. There's rumors that there was a little disconnect between Mike Brown and the players going forward. Okay, I understand that. But the way that the Sacramento Kings fired Mike Brown, obviously a devastating loss last night. But Monty Jones says it best. Something that is going to be done eventually should be done swiftly. And if the Kings knew they were going to fire Mike Brown, you don't bring him in the morning. You don't have him address the meeting with the team. You don't have him run through a whole practice. You don't have him go to talk to the media for 15 minutes before heading in his car, and then they give him the call that he's fired. Now, I remember something similar happening to that with Stan Van Gundy in Orlando, where he had the whole fiasco with Dwight Howard. And if you know a person, you're going to fire somebody, do it They should have did it right after the game. And obviously, this is just another bad move by Sacramento, in my opinion. Doug Christie is going to be the interim head coach. He's been with the team since 2021, 2022. So he's familiar. He's been a stalwart of the Sacramento Kings. I believe he was broadcasting for a little while. Obviously played there in the early 2000s with that Kings team with Bibby and Peja Stojakovic and Chris Webber and Vlade Divac, those guys, the gang. So he knows his way around basketball and has been around. And I'm not sure if he probably has a pulse on something that Mike Brown didn't. Has obviously a good relationship with the organization, obviously. But looking at it from that standpoint of what Mike Brown was doing, making the playoffs for the first time in 17 years, being above 500 in back-to-back years before this year, obviously there was something wrong. But I just feel like there were so many issues with the roster that wasn't addressed. How can you expect better results, especially in this Western Conference where other teams are built with more flexibility, more modernized, has shooting, defenders. If you look at all the teams in the NBA who are playing really, really well, most of those teams defend. Another thing those teams do is shoot the three ball, for better or for worse. And I don't feel like the Sacramento Kings have that. They don't have a bunch of 3-and-D guys. There's no point of attack, and I know there's been criticisms of De'Aaron Fox's defense. It's a bonus's defense as well, looking at this team. But that has been the issue for the past couple of years, where looking at what Sacramento is, that has been the one thing. Their shooting, consistency late in games, and most importantly, their defense. I don't think they addressed any of that. And I understand they added DeMar DeRozan, but I just don't think DeMar DeRozan moves the needle for the Sacramento Kings. And it's unfortunate. And Mike Brown is the fall guy for this roster construction. Their best coach in, 17 years, as I said, since Rick Adelman. I will say Mike Malone, wrongfully fired in 2015. But just another panic move by the Sacramento Kings, from drafting Nick Stauskas, trading DeMarcus Cousins, multiple coaches, bringing in George Karl. And it looked like the Kings were heading in the right direction, right, a couple years ago. Like the Beam, that was such a great success story. And to turn it around and look at what it is now is unfortunate. And Mike Brown being fired sucks. Obviously, I believe he's going to get another head coaching job. And just another thing before I go, looking at what Mike Brown did, basically being a defensive coach under Greg Popovich, going to the finals with LeBron in 2007, coaching him for a couple years, having that success there. I believe coach of the year again in Cleveland, stuff like that. Went to LA, kind of fell out, kind of bounced around as an assistant. Went to Golden State and really changed how he coached, because this guy was a defensive coach. And to change it around to go to a team and then have number one offense in the NBA, not being an offensive guy, you got to give him credit for that. So his ability to be flexible, and it's just crazy because we all remember that video of him running up the court, turn on the fucking Jets and running up the court, which is just a classic video that you can find on Mike Brown at a Kings practice. It's just unfortunate to see it all of a sudden just fall apart and lead to his departure from the Sacramento Kings. But I don't know where Sacramento goes from here. I know there's this whole thing with De'Aaron Fox saying that he wants to win, XYZ, trade rumors, whatever the case may be. Now, if the comments from Mike Brown about De'Aaron Fox rubbed De'Aaron Fox the wrong way and he went to management, that's his right as as the franchise player. That's his right, whatever the case that is. That would suck if that would happen. If that's not the case and the Kings looked at those comments and his actions being detrimental to De'Aaron Fox and the Sacramento Kings, that's stupid, because you should want a coach to hold your players accountable. So looking at it from that standpoint, it just sucks. And we'll see what happens with the Kings this year. They're bringing in Doug Christie. We'll see if this was just a move to get a coach that they actually wanted, to see what happens with the De'Aaron Fox situation, especially because he wants an extension. Possibly could get him a Supermax extension, could possibly be on the way out. So we'll see what happens with the Sacramento Kings going forward. But, yeah, I feel like this is just a lame duck move by the Sacramento Kings to fire Mike Brown.